Are you feeling lost and unsettled during your divorce here in Colorado? Don't let the house that you've built together become another victim of this difficult time. I'm Bobby Friel with the Just Living Realty Group, and here are some tips on how to keep that house after a divorce in Colorado. In this video, I'm going to guide you through the legal process of equitable property division in Colorado and discuss strategies to help you stay in your familiar home. From negotiating a buyout to refinancing, I'll tell you how you can protect your place and come out successful and hopefully mortgage approved. Oh, and if you have questions, check the top pinned comment or the description. That way you can just book a meeting and we can get those addressed. So I know the first question on your mind typically is, what happens to the house in a divorce and who stays in it while all the things get sorted? Just so you know that this temporary living situation often hinges on the presence of children. Judges typically prioritize minimizing the disruption for kids, and if there are school-aged children involved, there might be compelling reasons for the primary caregiver and the children to stay in the house until the divorce is finalized. This is called preserving the status quo. The idea is to maintain a sense of normalcy for the children during a very difficult time. So the question remains, who gets the house in the end? Ideally, you and your spouse can work together to reach an amicable agreement on what to do with the home. And if you can, this can help minimize stress and legal fees. But if an agreement isn't possible, the judge will make the final call. In Colorado, they follow a concept called equitable division. This means dividing the marital property fairly, not necessarily right down the middle or a 50-50 split, but the judge will carefully consider a few key factors before deciding the fate of the house. And you must let them know if you want to keep the house. So what are your wishes? Do you or your spouse have a strong desire to keep the home? The judge will consider your individual preferences, but they won't be the deciding sole factor at all. And the children, if minor children are involved, does the primary caregiver want to stay in the house for their kids' sake? Stability is important for children during the divorce, and the judge may weigh this heavily on their decision. Financial feasibility. Are there enough assets available to allow one person to buy the other person's share of the house? This option is called a buyout, and it can allow one spouse to keep the house while the other receives fair compensation. Selling it. If a buyout isn't possible due to all the financial constraints, the house may need to be sold to split the value fairly. Now, I know this can be a difficult decision, but it may be the most equitable solution if other options aren't feasible. But the problem is that in Colorado, it's very common for the primary caregiver of the children to be awarded the house in a divorce. Courts often see this as being the children's best interest. However, this isn't a guaranteed outcome, and the court ultimately decides who keeps the house if there's no agreement. And if you want to keep your house in the divorce, then please keep watching. Now, as you know that in Colorado, they follow that equitable distribution, which means that assets are divided fairly, not necessarily equally. So exactly this could work in your favor when it comes to keeping the house. But here are some strategies that you have to protect your home during the divorce process. First is the buyout brilliance. Now imagine this, the divorce is happening, but you simply can't imagine just leaving the house filled with all these memories. So here's where that buyout brilliance comes in. This strategy allows you to buy out your spouse's equity and become the sole owner. But before you start packing the boxes for your ex, let's explore the financial nitty-gritty. First and foremost, can you swing it? First things first, crunch those numbers. Make sure that you can afford the housing payment just on your own income. And you'll need to determine your spouse's equity in the house as well. You'll want to find a licensed appraiser or a real estate agent like me that can give you a very good value. And once you have a fair market value for the property, subtract the outstanding mortgage balance to get the equity amount. Now the big question is, can you afford giving your spouse half of that equity, as an example? But let's say you have a hefty retirement account. You could also potentially pull money from that to pay off them. You could potentially withdraw these funds, but you want to consider any penalties before the buyout. Another option is, do you have any cars or other valuable assets? Selling those could contribute to that buyout sum. And finally, you can consider a cash out refinance, which is what we could help you with, which is essentially turns some of your home equity into cash. So let's say for example purposes, your home's appraised at $400,000 and you have a $200,000 mortgage. You could potentially refinance your $300,000 mortgage with $100,000 going to your spouse. Now remember, this option is going to increase your mortgage payment, so make sure that it is feasible for you. And what about refinancing? Refinancing essentially means just replacing your current mortgage with a new one. In this case, you'd be taking out a new loan in your name only and removing your ex spouse from the equation altogether. So for that, along with the cash out refinance, you'd be qualifying for a mortgage on your own, which is very important because we're going to consider from lending perspectives debt to income ratio, employment history, credit scores, and typically a credit score of 620 or higher or 45% DTI is favorable. And if your credit score is a bit shaky, you may want to get some tips from us on how to build that up before you apply. And the refinance can seem daunting, but don't worry. Not only am I a real estate agent, but we also have a mortgage company as well. So basically, we're a one-stop shop specialized in helping clients navigate divorce, mortgage, and real estate. Now that you've explored buyout brilliance and the refinancing right, let's talk about the advantage of the appraisal. An accurate appraisal is literally so important for both buyout negotiations and securing that new solo mortgage because it establishes the fair market value for your house, which determines how much your spouse deserves and how much that you might need to borrow on your own. So if you and your spouse disagree on the value of your house, you think it's a charming gem, perfect for its location and features, and they see it as a bit dated, needing some work. Professional appraisal can act as a neutral referee, settling the debate with a fair and documented valuation. And of course, I have plenty of appraisers that we can use if you need a recommendation. And don't be afraid to ask questions during the appraisal process to understand how they arrive at their valuation. Of course, they're going to have that on the report as well. An appraisal that reflects your home's true value gives you a strong bargaining chip. Suppose the value comes in higher than you inspected. This strengthens your position if you're trying to buy them out, or it could give you some wiggle room when negotiating the final split. By the way, this guide has only really explored strategies for keeping your house in Colorado after divorce, but you also need to remember the main factors the court considers when determining who gets possession. The financial intricacies of dividing marital assets and debts are hard and depend heavily on your individual situation. So is keeping your house right for you? Let us know in the comments, or should you sell it? That's an option as well. And if you're considering moving or relocating, obviously anywhere in the Denver metro or the Vail High Country, Just Living Realty would be honored to help. We're just a call, text, email message away. But of course, to get to the front of the line and avoid that annoying phone tag, make sure you check the top pinned comment or the link in the description, and you can just book a consultation right on our calendar. It's super easy. Now, since you're here, spend more time, snoop around the channel, enjoy one of these other videos, and don't forget, as always, get out and enjoy those sunny days. Stay sweet.